The story shortly, but first we start out of Africa, where Zimbabwe's military officers have now denied any reports of an attempted coup. In a state TV address, Zimbabwe's military spokesperson says they were only targeting the criminals around President Mugabe. The military spokesperson assured that President Mugabe and his family are safe and that their safety is of utmost importance and is guaranteed. He also added that once the mission is accomplished, the situation will return to normal.
Targeting criminals around him who are committing crimes that are causing social and economic suffering in the country in order to bring them to justice. As soon as we have accomplished our mission, we expect that the situation will return to normalcy. To the civil servants, as you are aware, there is a plan by the same individuals to influence the current purging which is taking place in the political sphere.
Comrade Mugabe and his family are safe and sound, and their security is guaranteed.
Earlier, there were reports of gunfire outside of President Mugabe's house in Harare amid speculations of an attempted coup by the army. In fact, 3 explosions were also heard on the streets of Harare. Later on, armored vehicles were also spotted heading towards the capital city. Witnesses say they saw soldiers blocking major roads outside of the city. There was also an increase in the number of troops, including the movement of armored vehicles on Tuesday, which had sparked the rumors of the coup against the incumbent President Robert Mugabe. Well, President Mugabe had also sparked a rift with the military by sacking his vice president last week. The vice president was viewed by many as a likely successor to the president. The army viewed his removal as a part of Mugabe's plan to hand the power to his wife, Grace Mugabe, and the army chief had also threatened to intervene. Meanwhile, the United States and British embassy in Zimbabwe have now instructed their staff to remain at home because of the political uncertainty in the country. To get more perspective on the story, let's go straight to WION senior foreign editor Padma Rao joining us live from the international desk. Certainly political tensions there in Zimbabwe as many of these embassies now ask their staff to be extra careful. But there is a bit of a political turmoil when it goes to President Robert Mugabe. What are you picking up there, Padma?
Well, it has all the signs of a military coup, of course, even though the army has been careful to deny it. And this is primarily more than what the United States or the UK are thinking. I think the armed forces are worried about the immediate neighbors, South Africa and Zambia, who have made it very clear, and this has been indeed, long-standing agreement that they will not recognize any government that comes to power through a coup. So this is one of the reasons something that otherwise has all the features of a coup, which is, occupying the government broadcaster. In fact, practically all of the media is in state-owned hands because President Robert Mugabe, has ruled with a very stentorian hand. People are calling him, the archetypal African dictator. And as our report earlier said, he is keen that his wife, Grace Mugabe, who has an enormous support base amongst the youth because she is much younger than the 92-year-old president. But on the other hand, this is the reason why the armed forces are reluctant to call it a coup, because the African Union and most of the countries immediately surrounding the landlocked Zimbabwe are not going to recognize any force that takes over by any party that takes over by force.
And Padma, also really quickly, in terms of the Indian impact, there's certainly, there are a lot of Indians in Africa, many countries, of course, Kenya, certainly Zimbabwe as well. Any word at this point on safety? I mean, we've seen the embassies. Many of the embassies have asked people, their citizens, to be careful. Likely, do we hear anything from the Indian embassy just yet, or sort of a wait-and-watch game at this point?
I think it's a wait-and-watch game also because they're several hours behind India in terms of time. But I'm sure that the Indian embassies both in South Africa as well as in Harare, the capital of Zimbabwe, will be, very much on top of the situation because we have indeed had a very proactive foreign office, Indian foreign office, which has reached out to sections of the diaspora that may seem sometimes in trouble. So I'm sure that will happen even in this situation. We will know in the coming hours. It's a developing story and much remains to be seen, especially over the fate of President Mugabe, who, as I said, has been in rule and president of the country for the maximum amount of time. He came to power in the country became a republic, was independent in 1980, and he became the president in 87. So he's been in power since. Yes, he is stentorian. He's taken a lot of moves, made a lot of moves which are seen as unpopular, like sacking the former vice president, who has incidentally the support of the armed forces and also of the army war veterans, who have just issued a statement just now and said that they're calling this coup, they're supporting this seeming coup by calling it a bloodless correction to restore Zimbabwe to genuine democracy and a model nation, quote unquote. So the coming hours will be crucial, and we'll have to wait and watch.
Absolutely. Padma, we'll have you stand by. Let's also now recount the political career of President Robert Mugabe, getting you some perspective. A quick recap. He was born in 1924. He is the world's oldest leader still holding office. From 1964 to 1974, he opposed the white-only rule, and he got jailed. Fast forward to 1974, Mugabe then became the leader of the Zimbabwe African National Union Patriotic Party. In 1980, he became the prime minister after Zimbabwe attained freedom from the UK. Between 1982 to 1986, there was a quelled of a revolt by many of the people. There were nearly 20,000 people in that country getting killed. 1987, he was elected the president of the country for the first time. In the year 2000, 17 years back, he launched the land reforms, seized land that were owned by whites. In 2003, Zimbabwe leaves the Commonwealth countries over sanctions. In 2008, Mugabe's party loses its parliamentary majority for the first time. In 2015, named as the chairman of the African Union.